Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. We're back with Tried, Tested, Conquered right here on the new OPNS 97.1. Listen, Tried, Tested, Conquered with Bella Biz, who is all about her biz. And I tell you, this young lady is keeping us busy. Good morning, Bella. Good morning. We have an awesome guest. And I'm going to tell you something. Parents that are still at home with those young adults, with those young teenage children, let's pull them into the room. This segment today is going to help you out with your young ones. I am just overjoyed to have such a phenomenal young woman to share this platform with us today. Miss Mary Pat Hector. Now, if you don't know the name, I'm gonna need you to write it down, as Bella would tell you. Get your little handy dandy notebook and your pencil because you need to Google this young lady. Googling her is going to remind you, it's going to, hey, if you did not even know, it's going to educate you on the fact that when it comes down to standing for justice, age ain't nothing but a number. Good morning and welcome, Mary Pat Hector. Thank you for joining us to Try, Tested, Conquered. How are you this morning?
I'm wonderful and excited to be here today. I would do anything for Miss Bella. So thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Well,
Awesome, awesome. Bella, take it away.
Mary Pat Hector, you're going to soon learn. You join the family. So OPNS 97.1, you know how you do. It's your girl Bella. I'm about to go in, so I'm going to read a few things, and I do mean a few. This is a short bio. Trust me, I've seen longer bios. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Mary Pat. I'll go into it and let Mary Pat tell you about Mary Pat, okay? So here we
Mhm.
go, OPNS family. Mary Pat Hector, born in Atlanta. She's a graduate of Spelman College and a current graduate student at Georgia State University. At 22 years old, Mary Pat Hector knows how to change the world. She began community organizing at the age of 12. 12 people.
Mm.
At the age of 19, she became the youngest woman and person of color to run for public office in the state of Georgia,
Come
losing
on.
by 22 points. Let me rewind.
Come on, baby girl.
You in the right way. I said she organized community services by age 12. She started, which was documented at 12. 7 years later, at 19, she became the youngest woman and person of color to run for public office in the state of Georgia. And again, by only losing 22 votes. We'll talk about that later. Okay, keep that in mind. Mary Peck serves as a program strategist at Rise Incorporated. It's an organization led by more than 40,000 students and supporters from the colleges and universities across the nation. She's also the Georgia Black Youth Vote Coordinator. Again, that's the Georgia Black Youth Coordinator. She'll go into all this in detail. So people start writing down these organizations I'm talking about. Mary Pat has led and organized hunger strikes that have absolutely gained more than 75,000 meals for students at HBCU, developing an initiative to end student hunger on college campuses. I can take a minute and say I was a part of that. I was proud when Mary Pat reached out and said, Miss Linda, I was Miss Linda then. Can you give me a few dollars to help some of these students that's at these HBC colleges? Because remember, Miss Linda, when you was in college, oh, I remember Mary Pat, Roman noodles and Vienna sausages, okay? I remember those days. She said, Miss Linda, I need your money more than I need your voice. So I stepped in. Remember that, everybody. She also organized rallies to end police violence in communities of color and developed youth entrepreneurship programming that had assisted hundreds of young people to kickstart licensed businesses. One of her proudest accomplishments is becoming a fellow of the Peace First, and she'll talk about that later. It's actually peace, as in PEACE. She'll talk about that. She was awarded $50,000 in fellowship money for her national campaign called Think Twice. She'll talk about that too. A national campaign that educates youth on nonviolence, okay, and other issues which are crippling her generation. Her national campaign, I said her national campaign, provides teenage workshops for schools, train teens and college students, and many areas of youth advocacy techniques. not content to the rest of her accomplishments. Mary Peck speaks at high schools, colleges, conferences, women's events, and crisis shelter across the United States of America. Her story inspires. I said her story inspires and how to help people strategize, giving young people their own roadmap for changing the world. Shameless plug. I have honored Mary Pat proudly in several of my own platforms. The League of Women Voters, which we honored her in, as well as the Women of Distinction. Without further ado, for some of those who know Mary Pat, for others who don't, I am proud, because she is my daughter, to introduce none other than the Mary Pat Hector. Hey, Mary Pat, welcome to the family, baby.
Hi, Miss Linda. Thank you so much for calling me. I think people get so uncomfortable when they hear other people talk about all of the things that they've done. Thank you for that introduction. But, I'm just trying to get some rest. I have so much homework to do after the last few days. Read this entire election process. So I'm happy to decompress here in this space with you all today.
Awesome. Well, Mary Pat, we're going to go off script as we do, right, Queen? We really want to hear from you. We know we have an hour. It's important to unpack a lot. Mary Pat, I trust and know you. I want you to just share with the audience however you want to start, particularly in your organizations, where you've been. Let them know that you are real, that you do have a loving mother that I know and a father. Just talk about from your family, move on into your organization, and why you are doing what you're doing today, baby.
Right. Sure. So one of the few things that, really spearheaded my journey regarding activism in public service was growing up on the east side of Atlanta, where, gun violence was a thing. Right now, like in this space, we're talking about police brutality and police violence. Many people who are not of color say things like, why do they care about police violence when there's things like black on black crime, which we know is not a thing, right? Like there's black on black crime, there's white on white crime, there's Latino on Latino on crime, right? Like it's not just black on black crime, but we do know that violence in our community is an issue. But when you hear things like that, it saddens me because I know, that there are mothers and people in these communities that are doing the work to bring awareness to this form of violence. And that's actually how I got started. Moving from working on gun violence and issues happening in Stone Mountain, Georgia, I ended up meeting Reverend Al Sharpton and becoming the National Youth Director for his organization, National Action Network, at the age of 12 years old. But prior to holding that position at 12 years old, I had been organizing and mobilizing and getting involved in that space years prior to that particular position. After 10 years, this year, I finally decided to resign as National Youth Director. I think that, and I feel so old when I tell people like I had a job for 10 years, but I think, once you commit yourself to something for like 10 years, it's time to move on. Like you've contributed all you could to that particular space and position. And it's time to allow other people to move into that space, move into that position and grow and develop themselves or their work, or allow them an opportunity to accomplish something that maybe you didn't see or you couldn't do. Right. And so beyond, the work that I do at National Action Network or did at National Action Network, I ended up moving on into working with orgs like the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda, NCBCP, which is the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, which is an organization led by our friend Helen Butler, who is an amazing woman in the voting space in the state of Georgia. And also Rise Free, which is an organization that focuses on student basic needs and college affordability. So one thing that Miss Linda really touched on was the fact that I didn't know much about student hunger or food insecurity or homelessness until I actually got to Spelman College. And when I was there, it was just so surprising to me because, there are girls with meal plans and access to meal plans who didn't utilize them. With your meal plan at other schools, mainly predominantly white institutions, companies like Airmark have shared swipes programs where students are able to share their unused or unwanted meal swipes that they've already paid for and won't get their money back to students who can't afford those things. But at majority of our HBCUs, those programs, those same companies are not a thing. And so,
Wow.
yeah, so crazy. And a lot of people don't know that. I mean, these are things that Airmark and Sodexo are doing at schools like USC, UCLA and Berkeley and, Stanford, but they're not doing it at schools like Hampton or Howard or Spelman. And so I thought it was very important to bring that awareness. And so after leading hunger strikes at Spelman, Morehouse, and a few other institutions, organizing with students, I realized that, going into the food insecurity and student basic needs space, there are no students of color advocating on behalf of Black students. Many of the faces there don't look like us. And so, they're representing predominantly white institutions. And, there are even fewer people there, probably one or two in the conferences that I've been to that even came from historically Black colleges and universities, none of whom are actual presidents of these institutions or universities. So I decided to continue my work with RISE to bring awareness to that issue at historically Black colleges and universities. But my work and the trajectory of my work kind of changed over the course of the past few months due to the past presidential election. Through my role at RISE, I had an opportunity to develop a program called Black the Vote. And Black the Vote was an initiative that trains students and students of color, not just at HBCUs, but how to become poll workers, how to become poll monitors, election protection monitors, because those are extremely important. And also, when you think about just the amazing Black women in Georgia that are like organizing and mobilizing, there need to also be young Black women, like Black women, older Black women hold elections on their back, like, and they have for so long. But what happens when that set of women are gone? Like, we have to, like, young Black women have to continue that work. And so it was very important for us to educate young Black students on, just casting your ballot. That's important, but it's not enough. Like, we have to engage more. And what does that look like, right? The first step could be election protection. The first step could be becoming a poll monitor, understanding the political process. And I was extremely proud and happy to see so many young people of color like really own this election and like commit themselves to campaigns. I remember following Black the Vote, going to vote at my precinct in DeKalb County, Georgia. And, I saw young people with tattoos and dreads and like chains, like not even being like respectable, right? Like, respectable policies, their suit on. Like, no, they were young, regular Black people serving as election protection monitors. And I have to say they couldn't have been older than 25 years old. So, that's important work that needs to be done. And through Black Youth Vote, really focusing on, of course, programming to get more young people of color elected into office and focusing on those voters that many campaigns or organizations don't focus on. Every time I get on a platform, I talk about that video, like Get Your Booty to the Polls, because it started a huge conversation. But at the end of the day, I think what a lot of campaigns and organizations don't realize is we often target HBCU students. We often target, people that, business owners and all of a specific demographic of Black people to go to the polls. It's like a lot of the time you hear Black people from at the margins saying, I don't participate because no one's speaking to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't impact
Yes.
me. And
Yes.
it's like we have to go beyond what we normally do in order to get these voters. And the ideas that these young people came up with and the way that they targeted certain voters and in the messengers that they had, like Cardi B and all of these, and the C girls and like all of these people saying, get up and go and vote, I think contributed a great deal to the success that we had this past election. So, right now my work is really centered on, just civic engagement. Like, I started activism, on the protest and the community organizing level, and I did that for 10 years. But over time, and as I began to grow through Spelman, which is actually why I decided to run for office, I knew and began to realize, like, policy is where the change starts. Like, we it's important for us to mobilize and organize, and that's something that we can never stop doing. But in order for us to really see a change, it has to be at the policy level, and there are times where people will say, our movement's not the same as the civil rights movement or movements before us, but they were actually able to influence policy, and the policy in which they influence benefit us today. And so we need to work towards something that is that lasting, and
Yes.
that
Yes.
beneficial for generations to come. And I'm hoping with the outcome that we had in this past election, the fact that we finally have a president elect that is okay before the world with saying thank you to the Black community and thank you to Black women specifically for the fact that you are always here for not only me but the Democratic Party as a whole.
Now, Mary
So
Pat, I'm going to stop you 1 second because the audience doesn't know, the OPS family does not know what I know in particular about your election when you ran for office in Stonecrest. I want you to slow down because I know your trajectory, but our people need to hear this because it's very powerful. And Shanta, you get introduced to this as well. Talk about that part, being the youngest to run for a state officer. Talk about that and share it with the audience.
yeah, so during that time, I was a sophomore at Spelman College, and it was actually after my first presidential election, which was the 2016 election. That was the first time that I had an opportunity to vote. I'm so happy that the second time I had an opportunity to vote, I had a much better experience. But that was the first time that I had an opportunity to vote, and I was so hurt by the fact that so many young people, decided to protest their vote or, lost faith or hope in the political process. And whenever young people would tell me that, I would literally say, you know what, like, I understand where you're coming from. Because again, like, those people at the margins are never really targeted. They're never really talked to. No one's ever really, talking about policy that directly impacts them. Or if they do, they don't have them at the table. And so when young people would say things like, I don't trust the political process, I don't trust politicians, right? Like, these are the same politicians that refused to defund the police when there were hundreds of thousands of young people outside protesting to say they're killing us, like, so I get what you're saying, but to completely disengage maybe isn't the answer. Like, yeah, maybe it's the people that are the problem and not the actual system.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so how can we work to get rid of those people, right? You have to, like, if you're good enough as a young person to work on these campaigns, right, to give these companies your good ideas that they get to take credit for, then why can't you be that voice? What if you're
Right.
the person that you're waiting for? And so during that time, a lot of young people just decided it was time for a power shift. And this is something that we're literally seeing happen continuously beyond 2016, but well into 2020, where young people are continuously running for these positions, and some of them actually winning these positions with change, in their minds and in their hearts. So during that time, I just really wanted to run for office because I was tired of there just not being any change. And specifically for me, growing up in DeKalb County, like, I understand, change really starts at home. Like,
Right.
during that time, I was protesting and marching and advocating, in Ferguson, organizing in New York City around Stop and Frisk, like, organizing on college campuses across the world, having like tours with Denny's, like, all of these different things. But for me, I always feel like the community in which you come from, you have to go back to,
Yes.
and try to work and improve. And actually, like, on the campaign trail, that was actually like something that people continue to bring up to me, like, you do this activism and so and here and there and there and the other, which was a very interesting thing to hear from people on the ground. But I understand the importance of home first. So Stonecrest actually was a new city. For anyone who knows anything about DeKalb County, like Lithonia, Panola area, it's always been considered Lithonia, unincorporated Lithonia. And so, Stonecrest was then a new city. And, there was a new elected officials that needed to be appointed to run the city.
Right.
And so I decided to start local because all politics are local. And I feel like, it's important for you to, a person aspiring to, enter the field of politics, start somewhere and grow.
Mhm.
and we'll talk about people who start somewhere and never leave later. But it's important for you to start somewhere and grow. And so I decided to run for office in the city of Stonecrest, where we had thousands of people show up. I think I had ran in one of the largest districts in the city of Stonecrest. People like Congressman Hank Johnson, Marita Johnson, and others, who's the commissioner, actually supported my election. They were
Right.
also going to be constituents had I won of mine. But I ended up losing that election by 22 votes. And after that, I was like, you know what? I want to continue to help young people run for office, but ensure that they win by 22 votes at least. So following
It's
that election,
amazing.
that was my goal.
It's amazing. Something that you kept saying is a word that you kept saying. Uh, the new city of Stonecrest, which brought about the new opportunities, that new positions needed to be filled. I feel that way with the shift that is going on right now in the world. There's a newness in the atmosphere, and even though, and I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you, and like I said, I'm a mother. You are the same age as my oldest child. And I'm sitting here and I'm going, wow, how is it that she has been able to maintain her focus, because life happens, and when you're growing up and when you're young, there are so many distractions, but you are so in tune with what is going on when it comes down to injustice, when it comes down to the young voice, and so my question to you is, how do you reach the people, or how would you say we should go about reaching the young adults that don't reside in the metro Atlanta area? Because there's what you're saying, it's, yeah, you're right. We got to stay in front of the people. We got to stay in their ears. We got to let them know that they can do this. And who better to deliver that message than someone who looks like them, thinks like them, talks like them. And when I say look like them, that age, I'm here, I'm young like you. How do we get together to implement this change outside of the metro area?
Yeah, and I think oftentimes people, when you think about Georgia, you think about Atlanta and Clayton and Gwinnett,
Yes.
but people really don't focus on Athens and Albany, which is where my
Right.
family's
Yes.
from,
Yes.
in Augusta. But again, I think it really just starts with you know creating like spaces for these young people to really like get in tune with themselves and the movement. I think oftentimes, and even like with Stone Mountain, for example, there was no space for us to get in tune with ourselves or, begin to have these conversations. And in those communities, we understand that sometimes, due to distance or oftentimes due to lack of resources, it may be hard for them to connect and join into a space where they can do that. Where so as if you're in the metro Atlanta area, transportation and other things might seem or be a little bit easy. But I
Right.
think as a community or collectively, we need to start considering how we can ensure that we are creating spaces not just in the metro Atlanta area, but also in places like Albany and Athens, so that they can do this work. And I know that there are organizations that are actually being intentional with ensuring that they're including spaces across the state of Georgia. Specifically, I'm thinking more so civic organizations than social organizations, even though I understand we need both. But I think about orgs like the New Georgia Project or the People's Agenda, who have like more than 7 offices across the state, who were intentional about, and they hire and employ and work with young people
Right.
in these spaces, like ensuring that young people in the Savannah area, in the Athens area, in the Augusta or LaGrange area have some place where they can go and mobilize and also get paid for it. Because
Okay.
this
This
type
is-
of work is
Yeah.
not financially rewarding at all. And in many times, it even cripples your ability to even find a job. Like I remember when I graduated from Spelman, I think I talked to Miss Linda about this. When I graduated from Spelman, I had an opportunity to work with so many people and
Mhm.
do so many things, but because of the activism part, it crippled me from being able to intern or work with, the big law firms in the city. And I had friends that were just all of my friends like, yeah, I got a law job offer. I got an offer here and offer there. And, you know, if anyone knows me, they know like it's always been my dream to be an attorney. And I wanted to do a gap year, which I did do a gap year. But in doing a gap year, I wanted to work at a firm. And didn't happen. Like I applied to so many firms. And one firm just blatantly said, because of our clients, it might be harmful for us to even have you work here. So, I love to see organizations, in different communities, see young people and, the drive and the passion that they have as assets instead of liabilities. But I think, again, to answer your question, we need to work more to create spaces for people, specifically young people in those communities, to organize. There are orgs doing it, but we need more.
We do. And I'm going to take a shift, Shanta. I want to bring in family because I know your mother. So, Mary Pat, I will be remiss and we don't shine on mama and daddy and baby brother. So I want you to talk to the audience and share what you want to share about your family because it comes from good stock. I know your family well. So share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So my mom actually moved to Atlanta at 17 years old. She came from Dayton, Ohio, and she was the only person in my family initially to even leave Ohio. And she came here. She went to SCAD. She went to Georgia State. And at 19, actually, she opened up her first business, which was a daycare center. By the age of 24, she had several daycare centers across the state of Georgia. And, my mom was always really like an entrepreneur. But, in having these daycare centers, she wanted to develop, teen or recreation centers for young people, in the Campbellton Road area and the Riverdale and College Park area, so that, those young people could have opportunities or have a safe space to go to, which is also something that, we wanted to see in Snow Mountain, Georgia. So growing up in like that environment where my mom, did, community service, or I remember my mom like left, like, she left me with my sister, and my mom and my aunt, they went to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, and they were there for weeks, like working to rebuild or assist Hurricane Katrina. I remember even my mom closing one of her daycare centers down, so that people from Hurricane Katrina had somewhere to stay, during their transition process. So really, like, that is what I grew up seeing, like my mom and my aunts constantly giving, and instilling in us that like it's scared, like it shouldn't even, giving back or like serving others is just something that you're supposed to do.
Right.
So like in my family, we never really just did service like Christmas time or like eat. Like it was literally something that was a lifestyle for us, and we did all the time. Until this day, like, I see my mom give so much. But I have a lot of brothers. And so, when I was born, my mom's kind of like vision on things kind of changed.
Yeah.
And she, we did everything together. We still do. I finally moved out, and my mom called me the other day, and she was like, Mary, I miss you, and I think we should go hang out. So she came, and we went out, and we like did lunch or whatever. But me and my mom were like this. And so when my younger brother Mason was born, we're about 9 years apart. My younger brother Mason was born. My mom decided to retire. And she was like, I'm not as young as I used to be. And this is going to be the last child, and this is a boy. So I got to be at home. And so she decided to retire. She sold her businesses, and she became a stay-at-home parent. And during that transition in her life, she decided to really commit to us. And so, whenever I wanted to act, my mom was like, okay, well, we're going to act. If I wanted to dance, okay, well, she can't dance, but we're going to put her in dance class. If I wanted to sing, and I
Sounds
couldn't
familiar.
sing, she was going to take me to singing lessons. Like, you know, my mom was always a big, you know, if I even did horseback riding. Like, I wanted to be a horse, like, I wanted a pony. And my mom was like, okay, well, we're going to go horseback riding. My mom was always a big proponent, like, she was always a big advocate of us, like, being able to test out different things that we wanted to do, and not really, like, telling us a person that didn't allow us to, like, express ourselves fully. And so, you know, I guess it wasn't a shocker to her that I wanted to do service, because that was something that we always did together, or something that I always saw. But I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So the fact that this is what I wanted to do for a living was kind of like, how is she going to eat? I don't even know how I'm making it right now. But, you know, they supported me 110% in just what I wanted to do. And so when I became National Youth Director of National Action Network, you know, me having to travel to Ferguson, and stay in Ferguson for quite some time, me having to, you know, all of these different things, all these moving pieces, organizing in New York and in DC, you know, my mom was literally always there with me. And, you know, it was never something that even she asked for. And, you know, I think about all of the sacrifices in which she gave up for not only me, but now my brother. Like, my mom retired a long time ago, and she hasn't had a break since. And so, you know, my mom, a few years ago, my younger brother, he always used to say, you know, Mary gets all, you know, he used to get so jealous and about just me. And he used to say, "Oh, everyone always knows Mary, and Mary, 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 Mary." And he was like 6 years old, like, always, like, upset. And I remember I had an opportunity to meet Barack Obama, and he was just so upset. He was just like, she got to meet Barack Obama, and, you know, no one ever, and, you know, and my mom kind of felt guilty because, you know, she put so much into me. And, you know, she used to talk about the guilt all the time. Like, you know, I have to pour into Mason, you know, and I think me being a girl contributed a lot to me having a lot of her time with five brothers. But, you know, she was just like, I have to pour into him, you know, like, he needs me. And so, you know, after I, you know, ended up going to Spelman, my brother started doing, you know, different things, just trying to find himself, right, and his voice. And, you know, Mason realized, oh, I thought that I liked what Mary does, but, you know, and Mason would tell you, Mary's broke. She's poor. She's broke. So Mason's whole thing was, you know, he just wanted to be an entrepreneur. And, you know, seeing men like Tommy Dorch, and Jay Bailey, and, you know, the Russells, and, you know, people like successful Black men who are involved in community organizing, but are also successful entrepreneurs that give back in their own way, was, you know, were the men that were pouring into Mason, like Rashad Ritchie and others. And so Mason was like, you know, I think I want to start a business, but I don't know what kind of business I want to start. So Mason, you know, had dog grooming business, had, you know, just different businesses that didn't work out. And we went to New York City. So every year, National Action Network had our national convention in New York City. And we were in New York City, and this was the first time that Mason had ever gone to New York. And, you know, there were like all these hot dog businesses in the city. And, you know, in the middle of the night, if he got hungry, we would like walk to Times Square and we would get him a hot dog or something, if the restaurants were closed. And he was like, I love the concept of this, but I don't like the hot dog. And so he was like, but they're obviously making so much money if they're all across the city of New York. And, you know, the same man was there every day. And so Mason asked him, like, hey, man, I don't want to be rude, but, like, how much money do you make? And the man told Mason with this man's cart, like, how much money he made. And Mason was like, are you serious? Like, that's with the hot dog cart? That's how much money he made? So my brother said, you know what? I think I want to open up my own hot dog cart. And he had the tiniest little red cart. And it literally only made like 8 hot dogs. It was so small. But my mom was like, you know, if he wants to sell hot dogs,
Go
let
for
him
it.
sell hot dogs. Like, and he actually, you know, stuck with it. Like, this was something that he really believed in and wanted to do. And he actually saved enough money in order to buy a New York size hot dog cart.
Oh, wow.
And he ended up being able to go on Shark Tank.
Yeah.
And till this day, I don't eat hot dogs. I can't. But he ended up having an opportunity to go do the Shark Tank. And he bombed his interview at Shark Tank. And he was sad, but he saw like, and he had like, he has drive like the rest of my family do. Like, again, I will tell anyone, I do not have that like entrepreneurial spirit. I'm more of a community person, you know? And so like, he saw the president of Morehouse College, because the interviews were taking place at Morehouse. And he said, listen, my name's Mason. I own Mason Super Dogs, and I would love to sell hot dogs at Morehouse. Now, at
Come
Morehouse,
on.
they have a contract with Aramark. So
Right.
Mason was the first non-Aramark vendor to even be able to sell food at Morehouse.
Wow.
And
Go,
for
Mason.
years, he had his hot dog like his hot dog cart right in front of the bookstore at Morehouse College. And you know, when the pandemic hit, he had to just reevaluate his business. And this is where I come into play.
Yeah.
Because you know, he wanted to start this business, and he had the money. He didn't have all the money, so he was looking at me like, do you want to, you know, help me out? And so, you know, over the course of the past few months, I have literally been giving him, you know, money to help him start his business, for Mason Super Dogs. And now he's the youngest restaurant owner in the state of Georgia.
Come on, Mason.
Super Dogs at the age of 14 in DeKalb County. So now, if you ask me where my mother is, I will tell you every day from 8 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night. She is at Mason Super Dogs in the
Oh, my
kitchen,
goodness.
unwillingly making hot dogs.
Well, Mary,
And
stop
I
right there, Mary. I got a
that's
bone
how,
to pick with you because I was trying to get over there with that grand opening.
and it was the
I didn't
lines
want to.
were
Yes.
so long. And I think for the first few weeks, the lines were literally that long every single day.
Yes.
Yeah. But you know, it's cool. And Mason's thought process with hot dogs is crazy. Like Philly cheesesteak hot dog. He has macaroni and cheese on a hot dog. He has chopped chicken and buffalo sauce on a hot dog, a pizza hot dog, like anything you can think of. And they sell out every day. And they're huge. So if anyone's watching, go to Mason Super Dogs.
And pick me up one too.
Yes.
You know, it's amazing. I'm listening to your story, and it's always a build from something. You know, even with your mother starting out, and the listeners and the viewers on here, you know, we are definitely in wow about the things that you have committed at such a young age to do. And I like the way you highlighted that your brother was jealous. All he knew was every time you turn around, I'm hearing this chick name and it's getting on my nerves. What about me? How many of us has that really been our reality?
Yeah.
We have so many people that are tuned in right now, and I'm pretty sure that there are some mothers on here with multiple children. I always tell my kids, teamwork makes the dream work.
Yes.
Even though your dream may be different than my dream, it has to have a solid foundation. And
Yeah.
from what I'm hearing is that the laboring of your mother at such a young age, it shaped and molded the foundation that even carries you right now, that carries you today. And even in his young age, you know, Mason decided, okay, I don't like her. She's getting all of mommy's attention. But you know what? He still saw what you were doing. It still planted seeds of, you know what I'm saying, solidarity in his life to where, okay, I don't want to do that because she ain't making enough money. But I get the business concept. Okay, so what? I just love this. I love this. And having 5 children myself, each one of my children are active in my businesses, you know. And a lot of people think, okay, well, you need to let those kids go out and run and play, and you need to do this. Okay, there's a time for everything, but right now I need you to see what it takes to be successful. And going from that statement going into this, I've heard you say a few times in this interview, what you do is not very lucrative. It doesn't, even your 6-year-old saw that you were broke, right? Okay, your 6-year-old brother. Okay, do you have any regrets? And how great are the rewards that outweigh the money? People don't understand that.
Yeah. So I don't think that I have any regrets, especially because because I've had an opportunity to meet so many amazing people, and when I couldn't find a job, I was depressed on my mom's sofa. After Spelman, couldn't find a law firm that wanted to give me an opportunity. It was Helen Butler who like believed enough in me to give me a job, and like literally pay me a livable wage to do the work that I do. And basically say to me, Black women's work is never really rewarded. And she said, I can't give you everything that you deserve because I think you deserve $100,000, right? But I'm going to give you something, right? Because you just deserve it. And it's really just the relationships in which I was able to develop along my journey and the people that poured into me that continue to do so. And when you're in a city like Atlanta, those relationships are the most important, again, more so than the money itself. And so, along my journey, while I had nothing. I had an opportunity to like work with President Barack Obama on criminal justice reform. Like, there were meetings at the White House when he was the president that, I was the youngest person in the room. There were opportunities or chances where, I had an opportunity to work with, and meet people and giants like John Lewis, or like Joseph Lowry, who founded, GCP, or like CT Vivian, and really hear them and learn from them, beyond what people would hear or see on TV. And so for me, like that knowledge and that mentorship for me is so much more valuable. Or the relationships that I got to build with people like Al Sharpton or Bernice King, who I feel like molded me into the person that I am. So I feel like those things are so much more valuable. But beyond like the relationships, or the mentorship and the molding, I think what for me is more beneficial or impactful, is how many young people see me and say, you know what, she could do it, so can I.
Right.
Like I want every young person from Wesley Chapel and Lithonia, Panola, and like the entire east side of Atlanta to say, you know what, like if Mary Pat could do this, and so can I, right? Like you can truly make a difference. And I feel like, more young people are starting to recognize and see the power that they have.
Yes.
And, it just makes me so happy. And, for me, especially young, Black women, because there were times where I was in meetings and rooms with colleagues of mine. Now, mind you, I was the National Youth Director of a civil rights organization. Majority of the men in rooms were older pastors, right, who took up a lot of time, who took up a lot of space, who made sure their voices were heard. And, I had to learn how to speak up for myself.
Right.
Like I had to, there were moments where I would say something and it wasn't heard. Then someone else would say it 5 minutes later and it was the best idea in the world. And I'm like, what's going on? I remember, oh Lord, I'm gonna get in some trouble. I remember even being in a meeting
for it.
I remember even being in a meeting with Hillary Clinton, and this was when she was running for president. I remember being in a meeting with Hillary Clinton. I was speaking to a male who is popular in this space, and we were having an actual conversation. I mean, like really talking to each other. And I listened to him. We were engaged, and I remember I started speaking. And he literally just turned around and started a whole other conversation. And I literally, genuinely, like, could not even believe what had just transpired, right? But, like, those moments for me, like, helped me understand the voice that I had. And even, like, my education at Spelman College also did as well. But I kind of feel like those moments helped me so much because it showed me the importance of my voice. Right. And just teaching young Black girls that they too can truly change the world. They don't need anyone's validation.
Yes.
And no matter how uncomfortable people are about you taking up space, do it. Like, and I'm so happy that Black women, you know, are starting to realize the power of their voice. You know, oftentimes, like, we kind of step back, you know, like when you think about the women's movement, you know, step back for white women, or the civil rights movement kind of step back for Black men. But Black women are now like, you know, you're not going to not include my voice. Like, you're going to hear me. And I think I've also learned that, and like being able to show young Black girls that they can be fearless. Like, I was that girl that was called bossy. I was that girl that was, you know, had my mom called because they felt like I was too familiar. Like, I went to a private school in middle school, and the principal wasn't even in the class. Like, she would just go and peek in the classrooms, or the headmaster, and she would peek in the classrooms. And I remember, you know, she said, she called me out of the room and said, you know, you're really familiar with adults. And you know, she talked about calling my mom, and I went into the car. Now, she didn't know my mama's relationship with me. I went to the car. I said, "Girl," she said she was gonna call you, and my mama said, "Call who?" My mama said, "Oh, hold on." My mom called her and said, "Now, Mary said I was supposed to be expecting a call from you." And she said, "Well, yeah, your daughter's very familiar with adults and the way in which she speaks to adults and communicates." And my daughter said, my daughter's supposed to communicate with adults. Like, she's supposed to be able to do those things. And not in a disrespectful way, but I feel like oftentimes when young women are finding their voices, they're just pushed down and pushed down and pushed down. It's like, you can't have a voice in this situation. Right. You know, I was always taught to speak up for those that feel like they don't have a voice in a specific situation. You know, whenever you see something that's wrong, don't be afraid to say something. You know, if an adult in a classroom is doing something wrong, I'm going to say something. I'm going to go home and say, Mom, the teacher cussed out somebody's child today. You know, like, you can't be, you have to encourage your children to speak up. And so, you know, I always talk to young girls and say, bossy, little Black girls turn out to be, you know, bosses in the end, right? You know, and the women that really make change. And so I feel like that's rewarding for me to see, like, young Black girls realize I can be great, right? I can change the world. And, you know, no matter what people say or how they feel about me, you know, I know that this is possible.
Now, Mary Pat, I'm going to take a minute and pause, because this is tried, tested, conquered, and you've gone through each and every one of them. I want you to have an experience with the OP&S family, because some of us may never, just based on circumstances, get to the White House. I want you to speak a little bit about your experience, how you felt that moment of proudness during his term. And then I also want you to talk about Tamika Mallory in terms of working with her at the activism, because you know you and I talk all the time. Share with the audience, because they might not understand those experiences.
Yeah. So, when it comes to the White House, I remember the last meeting that President Barack Obama had with community organizers. And, you know, this moment is very important to me, because this was a moment where you had Barack Obama at a table. You had C.T. Vivian at a table. You had John Lewis at a table. And now those giants are gone, right? And I sat right next to C.T. Vivian, directly across from Barack Obama. And the first thing that the president started doing was quoting, like, he was making jokes from like a Chris Rock comedy special. And I was like, I don't even know what he's talking about. He said, well, it's a Chris Rock comedy special. And I'm like, I've never watched a Chris Rock comedy special. But so he, you know, we were joking, and it was funny, and we were talking about, you know, criminal justice reform. But then C.T. Vivian started talking, and it got like very, very emotional. So much so that, like, you know, everyone in the room just started crying, because we realized this was the last Black History Month that the first Black president of the United States of America would literally be in this office. And, you know, for me, it was unreal. Oh, and then this is what really got me. Everyone, it was time to take pictures. And like, everyone just like crowded the president. And I was like pushed to the back, and I was like, oh man, like I'm so hurt. And then he was like, Mary Pat, come over here. And I was like, I'm
I
over
know,
here.
that's
He
right.
didn't remember
That's
my
right.
name.
Black
He
girl
didn't
rocks.
remember my name, and I like pushed everybody that pushed me. I was like, move. Keep calling.
I know that's
So
right.
that was literally like one of the best moments for me. And just having an opportunity to just engage him, and also engage other people that he allowed to make history, like Loretta Lynch and like Eric Holder and like Valerie Jarrett, who literally were change makers in their own right, and just
Yes.
seeing how much and how hard they work to try to influence policy. But this is also what I feel is important for Georgians to know right now. We say that President Obama didn't do much for people of color. He had gridlock. So I want everyone in the state of Georgia to realize how important the Senate seat is. We were promised so much from Joe Biden, and he's constantly saying, I'm going to have people of color's back. He can't have our back if we have policy gridlock. We have to make sure that we show up and turn out at the Senate. I'm not endorsing candidates, but I am telling you, policy gridlock is a thing.
Oh, way to go, Mary.
Oh, and Tamika Mallory. Tamika Mallory is a mentor of mine. She actually gave me my first job. So when National Action Network, when I started working with National Action Network, Tamika Mallory, while Al Sharpton is the founder, Tamika Mallory was the executive director. And so it was Tamika Mallory that literally gave me my first job, my first check ever in life. It wasn't much, but it was something. And I was 12 years old, and I was so happy. And it was because of her. And I often tell people, like, she really gave me an opportunity. And I don't really think people understand how many times or how much she's actually gone out to bat for me, and really sat down with me and showed me how to organize. Like, I watched her at 12 organize and mobilize with Al Sharpton and others, marches on Washington with hundreds of thousands of people. And when Tamika Mallory ended up leaving National Action Network, I was still there, but she like still mentored me. We still had conversation. She went on to organize the Women's March. That was huge. And
Talk
now
about that a little bit, Mary Pat. Talk about that, because I've been following that.
yeah, she ended up working and organizing around the Women's March. And then, she was asked to step down from the Women's March due to how vocal she was on other issues, specifically around race. And the fact that, people wanted her to stop talking about these things, but she refused to. And so it just kind of seemed, and she worked like, you think about Shakisha Clemens, the Black woman who was harassed at the Waffle House, like the Women's March organizing around Shakisha Clemens. There's no way in the world the Women's March would have organized around, Shakisha Clemens without women of color at the core. And so she literally worked to ensure that, the Women's March has such a huge platform, but we can't forget about women of color. And, after that, she ended up leaving the Women's March. So many women didn't appreciate the issues in which they wanted to fight for. And it's because a lot of those women were not women of color. Which takes us back to, the women's rights movement in the beginning, where Black women organized, Black women mobilized, but Black women's issues weren't important. And so she ended up leaving the Women's March, and now starting Until Freedom, and, when you think about Breonna Taylor, like Until Freedom was literally at the center. She asked me a few months ago, like, we are taking up residency in Louisville, and we're going to be doing direct actions. So, when people were sitting on Daniel Cameron's lawn, getting arrested, I was there. When people were really, I was not getting arrested though, Ms. Linda, because I have FAFSA. If you're a felony, you can't take out student loans. Exactly. But I was definitely holding the camera, and organizing and mobilizing around those actions. And when I think about just how much she has influenced really the culture also around engaging people like Cardi B, and people like, Portia Williams and others in that space, she's done such a tremendous job. People like P. Diddy, like, in Louisville, organizing and mobilizing around Breonna Taylor, telling people, again, like, you're not going to forget to say her name. We're talking about George Floyd. we're talking about Ahmaud Arbery, you're gonna say Breonna Taylor. And so, you know, she is also one of those Black women that I feel also encouraged me to continue to use my voice for the best and not be silenced.
Wow. And this is just a tip of it, Shanti. I tell you, Mary Pat can come on for 4 seasons. Trust me. We're just high leveling because I know, Mary Pat, I'm looking at the comments. You are blowing up on the internet and especially Facebook. There's so many comments. I can't even start reading them, Shanti, about just how people feel about you. It's unbelievable.
Well, I'm glad that your mom is who she is.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm glad that, because one of the things as mothers to spotlight her as we get ready to wind down here, one of the things about mothers, this journey is not easy, especially when you have multiple children. But to be able to be the voice and the consistency that they need to tap into the best that they can be, I salute your mom. And now on to you. You had a choice to make. You could have either listened, watched, and learned, or you could have rebelled and wanted to be amongst the popular kids. So everybody has a responsibility in order to get the awesome results that we see in front of us right now. So I thank you. I thank you, baby. And you know, don't take the me calling you baby as an insult to how awesome you are. I'm just a mama, you know. And so my hat's
She
off to
calls me
you.
baby.
I do, right? My hat's off to you because one of the things, if nothing else, that our people take away from this interview today, you have a choice in which direction your life goes. I'm pretty sure that when you were younger, some of the people that were in your age bracket was like, "Oh God, no, she bored child. She's with all that grown people stuff." Oh, but look at you now. I used to tell my daughter, who is a senior at Savannah State University, it's okay, baby, that they call you a nerd now because eventually they're going to need the nerd to give them a job. I am so glad that you are sticking and staying. And no matter which way the wind blows, you stay right here. Because one of the things, the questions that I asked and you answered beautifully, the difference between the favor and the position that you have now and the money that everybody else chase, your favor outweighed that dollar. That dollar is always going to come to an end. But the favor that God has on your life, we can't measure that. So just know, baby, you are wealthier than you get to see on a day-to-day basis. I'm sorry, didn't you say in a room full of people with a whole bunch of names and a whole bunch of lights, the Barack Obama say, "Hey, wait, where's Mary Pat?" See, that's the favor of God. You understand? You don't have to my people tell me all the time, stop saying clap back. It doesn't sound good coming out your mouth. But you don't have to clap back the way the world claps back. You don't have to, you know what I'm saying, make a noise to have the spotlight. All you have to do is stay positioned for God to continue to bless your journey. I got to take and let my kids know now I got to study on Mary Pat because you are the type of example that I want them to flock to. So thank you. Thank you. Because it's been a sacrifice. I know. And guess what? You couldn't intern at the lawyer's firms because it would have been a conflict with what God has shaped and created and molded you to carry out in this land. Didn't you say being in the room with people to where now we know that these things are going to be remembered for generations, for generations? Well, baby, just go ahead and strap up your shoelaces because that's what you're doing. People are going to know your work, your name, 50, 60 years to come, all because you are laboring right now. So I salute you and I thank you for not considering it robbery or a waste of your time to share your story with the OPNS family today because you've touched me. And I'm a crybaby when it comes down to babies because I'm that person. If I could just get all the young children in their innocence and just put them in the biggest house ever to take and shield and protect them from all of the tainted issues of the world, I would do that. So to see someone such as yourself, you ain't said, the heck with this. Look, I need my paper. The heck with this. I want the house. You didn't do that. And baby, that makes you more special than you'll ever know. So thank you. And I'm going to hush now because I feel the tears. Bella.
Oh Lord, don't start. Well, Mary Pat, let me take my few minutes because I can keep you on it. Guess what? Because we can do that, Queen. We own what we're talking about. I want you to take a few more minutes and share with the listening audience. And we again, let me make a disclaimer: we are not endorsing any candidates, but I will be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to have Mary Pat Hector at 22 years old, but she has an old soul, to share with the audience. This runoff race is coming up very soon. I want you to share with your heart, Mary Pat, the importance of voting. Can't nobody do it the way you do it, Mary Pat, because we understand that it's important and it will make a difference. So, Mary Pat, take us out with any comments about the runoff and any parting words you want to share with our listening audience.
Yes.
Absolutely. So, historically, when you think about runoffs, one, I have to highlight the fact that the state of Georgia made history several times this election season. With the primary election, we had the largest primary turnout rate. We had over seven. We have over 7 million registered voters in Georgia out of 10 million Georgians. We also have, I guess, the highest turnout rate when it comes to early voting ever in the state of Georgia this past presidential election season. But that momentum does not end there. Again, I talk about the fact that the world is literally looking at the state of Georgia until January the 5th to see what the voters decide. There were so many conversations about, this state becoming a this state or that state or this state. And no one even thought like Georgia, no one thought that Georgia had the ability to be a state that would really depend or determine the fate of this election.
That's right.
But we literally stood in there. And I have to say again, it was the women of color, that organized their communities in Chatham County that no one thinks about. It was the women in places like Savannah and Augusta and Albany. And the world's like, Augusta, Albany, like, what are these places? And it's like, those are the women who cast their vote.
That's right.
And have you all waiting. Like,
yes.
And those are communities of color. And so again, like, it's beyond just that metro Atlanta area, but there are Black women fighting all across this state and in rural communities all across the country that made sure that their voices were heard this election season. But we can't stop there here in this state. We have to show up and show out. When there are normally runoffs, about 25% of those who vote go back and vote again. We cannot afford that 25%. We need everyone to get up, go out and early vote. We're actually going to lose some early voting days this year because of the New Year and Christmas. So, the earlier you can early vote, the better. Go ahead and request those absentee ballots. They'll be waiting again for a few days, but let them wait. We need you guys to show up and show out. And then, for anyone who's watching this with young people, with children, the one thing that I will tell you is to continue, or if you know someone with children, continue to pour into those children and continue to tell them that they don't have to wait to be great, that they can change the world and invest in them. I think, oftentimes, you see young people doing amazing work and you say, oh, like, that's cute. That's so sweet. You keep up the great work, but no one really believes enough in them to give them a chance, believes enough in them to invest in them. When I ran for office, I was hurt because these same adults that were saying young people don't care about issues impacting the world. Young people don't care about policies. They only care about music and Instagram. Here I am, running for office, trying to impact policy, and you're telling me to wait my turn. I believe it's important for us to allow young people to, follow in their destiny and follow their dreams and support them along the way. Because, we have to start seeing youthfulness as assets instead of liabilities, and also teach them that, your age is not equal to your experience. Because as far as I was concerned, I was the only person at 19 who had an opportunity in my election to work with a president of the United States on things like criminal justice reform.
Come on, Mary Pat.
So if anybody was qualified in that position, it was me. And so, I think we should encourage our young people and let them know, your age does not equal your experience. And just to continue to just grow them and build them up, because they are the future. but they won't know what to do if we don't give them an opportunity now to lead.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. This has been good. And thank you so very
Gooder
much.
than good.
Thank
Gooder
you.
than good. I
No,
love it, Bella. Gooder than good.
yes, I want the OPNS family to understand why I love this woman, this young woman, so much. And what I wanted to leave on a shameless plug: love on somebody outside your family. Mentorship, as Mary Peck knows, she has several, and I'm proud to be one of them. It's important. I take mentorship extremely important, because when young people want to galvanize and do something, whatever it is, allow them the space and give them the pass to do it. Because I always often say, we say a lot. Young people do what they see us do. Sometimes when Mary Pat keeps it real with me, they don't want to hear the long speeches. Lord knows, shout out to my daughter Ashley on this line. Mine, you're saying too much. But see, what they do is they watch what we do.
Amen.
That's what's important. So Mary Pat, you know me, girl. Whenever I want you, need you, you're always there. I salute you. I thank you. We want to have you back at some point in time after the election so we can see in the 2021 what really happens. But you know I love you.
Thank you so much. You all have a great day.
You too. Thank you so very much. All right. OPNS, it's been real. We'll see you in a moment.